So we're here live, Gonzo. We are in the APC studios, and by APC studios, I mean Jeff Muir's office. Hanging out. We've been in a series with our young adults group Resonate for the past 3 weeks on practical truth. We've been looking at apologetics, but not just the defense and arguing of faith, but how we can actually live these things out practically. How we can actually take this gigantic subject, which is apologetics, and actually live it out every single day. And whether it's getting into debates with other people or just in the marketplace, in conversations, how we can actually go and talk to people about that. And you've been a great hand in helping me in this series. And last week you talked a little bit about faith and reason. So I guess my first question for you would be, what is the difference between faith and reason?
Yeah, and I think it's a good question because out there in the world, they have put this war or this battle between faith versus reason. And it's funny because faith in the Greek, in the Greek word is pistis. And basically it just means conviction of truth of anything. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. So basically, which is what reason is. So it's basically they're having this argument between reason versus reason, and I think it's important for us to understand, because even in our own circles we have somehow made a mystical faith, like this thing is out there, and what is faith, and define it, and for Paul in his writing, and even Christ talks about that faith. It is a matter of thinking to understand. Even God says, know me. Doesn't say believe me, it says know me, which it's kind of cool because it involves thinking and makes it relational.
So why do you think then, and you've been a Christian for a long time, but you've been a thinker for a long time too, why do you think it's so difficult for people to actually be able to say, I believe? You know what I mean? Like, or rather, why is it so hard for people to be able to say, I get it? Why do we make faith why do we make faith so difficult, rather?
Mm-hmm. I think it makes it difficult for people because we are afraid to think. And it's not an issue with just in church circles or believers, but also in the world. Thinking was such a part of culture. All the philosophers in the 1800s, and even back in Greece, it was part of life. Even in the Bible we read, God created this sense of church, in the Greek word koinonia, right? Which, when you read it, it's debates. When we look at Jesus, when he goes to the synagogue and he reads from the scripture, he goes, today this scripture is fulfilled. And then people start talking. We go, oh, if that happens today in church, that's crazy. But no, that was it. You went up, read a passage that was meant to be read. You throw you throw your thought on that passage, and then you begin to debate it. Mm-hmm. The Pharisees' interaction with Christ is part of culture. That's how it is questioned, and we are scared of it. And even great thinkers like Immanuel Kant, who said that eventually people will stop thinking. And I think because of the lack of thinking, there's been a lack of faith everywhere, not only in the church, but in the world. We talk about spirituality, but it's a term. But if you think, if you're a person of thinking and you ask questions, it's going to lead you to make a faith statement. Yeah. Whatever you do. But people don't want to. They just, we leave that to philosophy, we leave that to religion, but yet it's everyday part of every part of our lives that we have to do that.
And it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're people who they choose a side. Mm-hmm. I'm either all faith, and it's, you mentioned it before, it's mysticism on an extreme, or it's just name it and claim it. I believe it, therefore that's it. Or it's I'm going to almost outthink myself out of my faith. Mm-hmm. I'm going to outthink myself out of believing in Jesus. I'm going to put myself in a circle where I'm always Where do you find that balance? Like how does somebody practically find the balance of being somebody who believes that God can heal, believes in miracles, but also isn't somebody who doesn't read a book? Yeah. Like there's somebody who they read, they have knowledge, but they also have that personal sense of knowing But in the midst of all this stuff, I know that God is still real.
The one verse that I kind of struggle, and then doing this kind of begin to study it on it, and is a famous verse that Paul talks about. We walk by faith, not by sight, and we look at it, and we've used that verse. And I grew up in a small town, middle of in Sound, and I always question everything. It's always been my nature, and basically, I grew up in the mentality that if you ask many questions, then you have no faith. But when you look at Paul, he says, we walk by faith, not by sight. And that came to me, revelation. I started to think about it. It's like, what does it mean? And I remember when I was young, I got really sick, ill, and I found out I had colitis. And it couldn't be repaired so it was like a 6-month ordeal. And then they figure out, we have to do surgery now. You won't survive anymore. Your colon's going to perforate and it's going to rip and you're going to die. So we need to go into surgery in 24 hours. So I met the doctor, great guy. They told me he's the best. And I was in a room with other kids at Sick Kids Hospital, awesome hospital. Sick Kids Hospital, who have gone through the surgery. Mm-hmm. And then you ask questions, I'm better now, and then you're like, okay.
How old were you at that time?
I was 13 or 14. And then I'm like, okay, they survive. And then Dr. Filler, great guy, and you're in one of the best hospitals in the world. So you have this faith, you have this confidence, and you have to do it. It's not like you have no choice. Mm-hmm. Either you do it or you die. And I remember when my surgery came, and I felt pretty confident. My doctor goes, listen, you can walk. So let's walk into the surgery room. And I'm like, okay, fine. And Sick Kids Hospital is part of a teaching hospital. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like Grey's Anatomy. I went to this dome glass, and there's like all these people there. Yeah, I haven't seen the show, but I heard about it.
I know the name of it.
Yeah, and I know that. And I've seen the commercial with this dome thing, so I've never seen the show. But anyway, so I walked in, and then people started clapping. And because of the Dr. Filler, and people love him. So I'm like, oh, wicked confidence. I'm like, this guy is like superstar. So then my doctor decided to hey, some doctors, I don't know if you have those doctors who really love what they do and they get really hyper about their stuff. And he goes, do you want to see some of the stuff that we do for surgery? I'm like, okay. And there was these tables with all these trays and covered with green stuff. And he opened one up and there was 50 knives in there. And there was this one that looked like the ones you use for baking when you put the icing. Yeah. But it had a saw and it was huge, like a machete. And I almost fainted. And all of a sudden, I had no confidence anymore. I'm like, I'm going to die on the table. I'm not going to see my parents again. I'm not going to get married. Everything, all my dreams that I had are gone. I'm dead. And that's when when I read the verse, it brought me back to that. Is that when I saw the knives, I lost faith because I stopped thinking. I reacted. I began to react to what I saw. And then for me to get back into faith was, why am I here? This is the best hospital. This doctor's amazing. And I talked to kids who had worse than I did and survived.
Yeah.
Right? So we walk by faith, not by sight. Paul is saying, you have to think. Because if you stop thinking, you lose faith and you begin to react. And it makes sense when you see Peter's life getting off the boat. Jesus is walking. He's like, Jesus, get me out. And then Jesus is like, come out. And he's there and he's walking in water. But then what does he do? He looks at the and then he stopped thinking. And then Jesus says, you have little faith. And he's, why did you doubt me? Mm-hmm. It doesn't just leave it at you have little faith. Jesus explains why he's talking about faith. Why little faith? Why did you doubt? You stopped thinking. You started looking at other things. You doubted what I said. And that's why, so to Paul and almost to Jesus and to God who says, know me, it's basically, you have to think to be a person of faith. God calls us to know me. And Jesus says, when he talks about faith, he goes, what are you worried about tomorrow? Concerned about what we're going to have tomorrow. He goes, consider the lilies of the valleys, deduce, think about it. It doesn't say, believe me, think about these things. And it's true. And then when we go through our moments when we start doubting and we freak out, you realize I wasn't thinking. I'm just reacting to what I see. And God says, that's not cool.
You know what I love? You look at Paul in Acts. And Paul's a thinker. We have all these epistles that show that. But we also see him as a man of faith. He's a man who believes, don't worry, the storm's not going to kill us.
Yeah.
God is on our side. And he has this beautiful duality. We see his thinking side in the epistles. We see his faith side as he's walking towards Rome. How do you presently now, you're a husband, you're a father too, how do you presently now live out that duality of being a thinker? Because like I said, I've known you for as long as I've been here at APC, I've known you to be a thinker, but I've also known you to be a man of faith who believes that God can do these things. How do you do that now as a dad and as a husband?
If it's because the cool thing about God and trusting God is that He provides the answers to everything. So yet we're thinkers, yet God created us to think. He didn't want us to believe in Him blindly. He created He says, look around you. So many, the universe. Dawkins in one of the videos for Expel, he says, they ask him, what would you do if you die and God does exist? He will say, why did you hid from us? Why did you try so hard? But you look around, you can't stop thinking, wow, there's a moon there. There's something greater than this. And God gave us a hint, and God says, come and think. And if you realize that, it's not this abstract idea, but the cool thing of reason is to find meaning. That's basically why we're here. What's my purpose? The Greek philosophers, that's what they're talking about. Why are we here? What's our purpose? What is our meaning to life? And then they quit. They realized there was nothing. And then John writes, in that culture, because he's writing to the Greeks in Greek, and he uses the word logos. The logos came. And logos is the source, at its core is logic. And it makes sense. You can't have a conversation without having reason. For the Greeks, if you spoke, it had to be something important. Yeah. So therefore, for them, language, it was the physical evidence that something was reason, something was logical.
Which is so funny because now we have so many people that just talk without thinking.
Yeah.
Just say
blah,
whatever.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then John uses that word. In the beginning was the Logos. Here's your purpose. Here's the reason. Because God spoke the universe to existence because He has a purpose. It wasn't just God goes, but I'm bored. No, He spoke with purpose. So therefore, gives us purpose. And that, for me, it's such comfort to be a father because, yes, we think and we trust in a God who is infinite, but yet I'm finite. My thinking gets me to a little bit, and our thinking gets us to a place where we realize we are nothing. And there's something great out there. And there's someone out there who gives us reason is a person.
Yeah.
The Logos is not this abstract idea that there's the reason, but the reason that you're here became a person. And we beheld His glory, which is a beautiful verse for thinkers. That's no, it's not an abstract idea; it's a person, and you get to know Him, and therefore that gives me faith. It gives me that this conviction that my reason is not an abstract idea; it's a person who has a purpose. He has a purpose for the world, like what Jesus says. Consider the lilies. Wow, God created the lilies. There's a purpose for them. What more do I have?
Yeah.
And then as a parent, that I know that as much as I love my kids, whatever, and I do the best for them, there's someone out there who loves me, loves them more than I could ever love them. And I can say, God, here they are.
Yeah.
You can, my best is garbage to what you can do for them. And my job as a father is to help them, my kids, to go up to them and allow them to think and come up with that. And parents get scared about sometimes when they ask these hard questions, but now they're in the journey. And my job as a father is to go, listen, I don't have all the answers, but there's a Logos. And that Logos loves you and was a human and understands you. Is not, and that's, it's such a comfort to know that.
Amen. So then, I guess one more question I have for you is: you're also a filmmaker.
Yes.
You love cinema.
Mm-hmm.
You devour it. You just kind of you enjoy all sorts, all types. As a filmmaker, how do you convey that, or what are some scenes that you've seen in cinema and film that you've been like, that's it, that's the conversation, like that is it in action.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of movies out there.
I know there are.
Which
there are at least more than 5.
Yeah,
Created in the world.
There is that, and there's a huge sense today in a lot of movies, and even in music, where there's this sense, because out there, if you have a faith, if you are a believer of Christ, or even if you're a Muslim person, whatever, people, the science, the bright minds laugh at you. Oh, you laugh, you know. If only you stop believing these legends and just use reason, life will be better. But then you get this sense where a lot of movies, there's this restlessness in people, in characters. No Country for Old Men, the ending is so bleak because it's like, what the heck is this? What is life? You know, and there is this theme under there. And the thing is, people are like, we've come to the pinnacle of knowledge and technology, which is kind of scary now where we're at. And people are going, but it's not answering the question. And Immanuel Kant, who is the father of modern philosophy, he says, if you want to live a thoughtful life, you have to answer 3 questions. How can I know what's real? What must I do that's right? And what can I hope for? What can I live for? If you want to be a person of reason, a person who has a thoughtful thinking life, you live your life to answer those questions. And everything we provided in the world does not answer that. And people are like, I'm not happy. So even though they may think I'm not a thinker, in their souls, they're like, you know what? And you see that. I just watched recently 2 movies, The Master and The Sound of My Voice, and they both deal with the cult. And it's that the hunger of people like, why am I here? And they'll follow whatever. And if it sounds, okay, that kind of makes sense. If it gives people just a little bit of sense of reason, they gobble it up.
Yeah.
Because in its heart and science and those things does not answer that hunger that everybody has. Radiohead calls it the eternal itch that we can never scratch. And even the new Daft Punk album that you introduced me to.
Great album, by the way.
I know, awesome album.
Great album.
But it's again, is those questions, like the song Touch. Touch, you almost made me think I'm real, but I want something more. And the other one with the doors, and there's a door with another door and a key. Why am I here? I want, this hunger for like, we have all this stuff, but I'm not happy. Yeah. I'm not fulfilled. And that's the beauty of that. And those are the things that we can gravitate. It's a commonality. And in apologetics, Christian apologetics, we have to understand that everything has truth. But the ultimate truth is God. And then, so therefore, once you understand that, then we can find a common ground to start with, like Paul did at Mars Hill.
Yeah.
That unknown God, let me talk to you about, comment. And I think we have to do that. And I understand that there's truth in everything. But it's not 100%. Maybe you have 75%, 25, 80%, but 100% is God. And that gives us something to start with. And you can use music, film, and talk about that and get into a conversation. People like talking. And we shouldn't be afraid of it.
It reminds me of, I watched this interview with, I think it's on Conan with Louis C.K. And he concludes this whole thing. He's talking about how, people complain and they're sitting on a tarmac and they have to wait for 20 minutes. And he's like, you're not in awe, you're not marveling the beauty of flight. You're flying in the air and you're complaining because you're waiting. You're flying. Yeah. And he concludes by saying, nobody's happy, but everyone's fine. and that it reminds me of different characters, the Don Draper types, the Tony Soprano types, who are trying to fill their lives and with different things because they're hungry for something, and the whole idea of looking for love in all the wrong places, sort of idea. And I love what you talked about, how we all have that common ground that we're all searching. The difference is that we found the truth as opposed to one of many truths on the Wheel of Fortune. We found that one truth that can bring people, that can fill that, this water that I give you, you will never be thirsty ever again. Jesus talks about, like that whole idea of that truth that you mentioned, that supreme truth, and how our role in this world, the moment we found that truth, is to then reveal that truth. No different than as we're talking, I was thinking so many times of how Paul finds himself in different situations, and how Luke writes that he would find himself, and wherever there were people, he would be persuading people.
Yeah.
That word's used, that he'd be persuading. He'd be, through debate, through conversation, persuading people towards faith, persuading people towards actual truth, as opposed to that subjective, I've created this sort of, this is my, maybe it will work for you sort of truth. And I love the idea that you mentioned of finding that common ground.
Yeah.
Whether it's through media, whether it's through conversation, whether it's two dads sitting in a park and both watching their kids play and being able to have conversation and being able to find that common ground to be able to say, here's the reason why I can be a parent.
Yeah.
It's more than just a book. It's more than a seminar. Those seminars are good, books are good. There's a truth that I strive for, a truth that is within me that has impacted my life, that you said it. I can only do so much, so I give my kids to one who is better, one who is higher, one who is stronger. I love that.
And the cool thing is, if you look at the simplicity of the story, the gospel story, it starts with us losing our home, and everybody's trying to find that we have a beacon, and we're trying to find out why am I wandering, and that's all of us. Even in me, a person of faith, I'm still in a wandering state, but I know that it has an end. I know where it is. I'll get there, and that's the beauty of it. It's just, very simplistic. We're a whole bunch of, longing to find our parent, our creator, and you look at even science and philosophy, is that common thing, and it goes back to that. We sever our relationship with God, and then something's missing, and we choose not to. And that's the thing. And everybody has a faith statement. Everybody believes in something, because pistis is to have that understanding, believing in something, in anything. So that's comforting too. When you were dealing with somebody, you're dealing with someone who has a faith in something. So we're both in the same common ground.
And then the thought of along with that, not only do we all have a belief in something, probably referencing back to something you talked about before, about how, science and technology, it's crazy to think that, for the scientists who does after all their hypothesis, after all their experiments, and they find the answer, they realize it wasn't satisfying.
Yeah.
For the person who collects every gadget, and you and I, I'm a gadget guy, so all this stuff, you collected it all, you've saved your money, you've bought it, and then you realize there's going to be a new one coming out in 2 weeks. This is not good enough, and there's always that pursuit, that desire to know that I love that when you mentioned that there's that beacon that we know that there's something there. That going back to that song, the Daft Punk song "Touch," there is more. There is something more than just. Yeah. Almost just getting to that point.
Yeah, and we live in a society in a time where science and the bright minds, they are stripping us of humanity. And you talk about film. One of the best films that kind of encapsulates that is The Watchmen. And people go, "Whoa, it's a deep film," because the ultimate hero is what's his name, the blue guy, Manhattan, who has almost become like a god. But yet, life sucks for him, because everything is broken down to just a mere cell. Yeah. And he can't find the joy, the beauty in someone's life. someone's brokenness that goes, now I understand life. It's not perfection, not having everything. It's the realization, like, brokenness, yet you overcame that. And that I can't explain, right? But that's what we're doing. We're removing everything. Everything can be explained. Love, or just hormones, and we're just reacting to this thing. And that's a boring, and that's what the world's reacting to. This is the art, and art is always a pulse on society. And Daft Punk's new album gives us that. It's like, this is it? I love you because my hormones are, everything's going on. Wow, I love you, baby, because my hormones are reacting. That's not, and that's what this is dissatisfaction of that. We're just mere reacting to something, and what we're being told is that we have no control at all, and that's a very sad, bleak way to live life.
And probably a bleak way to end this video.
but the encouraging
and cut.
And the encouraging thing is that we're not alone, right? Is we know God is real, and He left us the Holy Spirit, and that helps us we can have all the knowledge in the world. And there's people out there who are great theologians, but they don't believe in God because they don't allow the Spirit. And then we can have all the knowledge we want, but without the Spirit, we can't get that nudge. We cannot. Sounds kind of weird, but feel it. Like we know what to say. It's not because of a brain. Important, and you see that in Paul's life, very knowledgeable, and then because he's connected with the Spirit, he knows what to say, and that removes any pride from us. It's just like, it's not us.
And to kind of build on that and to kind of get in this in the wrap up mode. There's some points where where there's some points where it's with words.
Yeah.
There's other portions it says, we didn't come to you with wise and persuasive words. We came with demonstration of the Spirit's power. And again, you look back, and Jesus, the example of examples, he shows that more than anybody else, where he's able to sit down and reason with people, whether they like it or not, whether they want to hear him or not.
Yeah.
He's able to sit down and, some people, they hear his wise and persuasive words and it causes them to pick up a stone and want to chuck it at him.
Yeah.
Others, they sit down and they go, come meet this person who told me everything about me.
Yeah.
And there's other times where it's not with wise and persuasive words, it's with demonstration.
Yeah.
You want me to prove that that I can heal this guy, that I can forgive sins? Okay, fine, pick up your mat and walk. Demonstration of the Spirit's power. And it goes back, like that. We don't have to be all faith. We don't have to be all reason, but we are able to figure out how to walk that fine line in the middle and be people who our reason backs up our faith, and our faith backs up our reason.
Yeah.
Our belief is not torn down because we're thinkers, but our thinking actually gives us more reason to be like, and I can believe this stuff.
Yeah, and Christ did that all the time. They asked him a question, he didn't answer. He told a story and walked away. He wants you to journey. He says, knock, seek, and the answers will come. And we're afraid of that. And we're afraid of having people helping the journey to make God real. We want to go, here's God, take him. And God, throughout the Bible, since creation, is showing us it's steps.
Yeah.
And as long as we're in the process of in that journey, it's good, like the creation story. That day 6, day 7, when God, but day 1, when He just created day and night and heaven and the sky, that kind of thing, it's still not a functional planet yet. But God says it's good because it's in His journey. And Christ, in His life, did the same thing. The Beatitudes, it's the journey. It's think about this, steps, and you get to this point. And then people ask questions, goes, here's a parable, think on that. And He left them. But He knew that thinking alone is not the ultimate answer, is by, you said, dying on the cross. And then hopefully people will marry the two and take thinking and then active and make it real. Because even Christ knew that I can't just leave you thinking, I have to show you what it is. So,
well, Gonzo, man, thanks.
No problem.
This is awesome.
Wicked.
Video out.
What
up?